Rain slashed sideways across the Willamette like silver whips. At midnight, Portland blurred into a dim constellation of fairy lights and smeared neon, the steel trusses of the bridge vibrating under gusts that sounded like a wounded animal. Maya Torres hugged a fraying coat to her ribs and quickened her pace. 10 hours on her feet at a late-night diner had set her calves on fire. A canvas tote of day-old bread thumped her hip. An old film camera, her last souvenir from journalism school, was tucked inside her hoodie as if warmth could prevent it from finally dying. That was when she saw the silhouette, barefoot, slick with rain, standing on the outer rail. Arms out. Dress clinging like a second skin. The posture of a person memorizing the drop. Maya didn't think. She ran. Her shoes skidded on a ribbon of water. "Don't," she shouted, voice shredded by wind. The figure flinched. A foot slipped. The body tilted into open air. Maya dove, catching a wrist with her wet, freezing hand. The pull was savage. Pain flared through Maya's knee when it smashed the iron rail. The woman dangled over the river hair, lashing her cheeks, breath coming in sobs. Maya locked her stance, muscles burning, and dragged up an inch, then another. "Don't fight me," Maya said through clenched teeth. "Look at me. Breathe with me. In, 2, 3. I didn't want, the woman gasped, panic jerking her legs. "I can't, my arm." "You can," Maya said. "You can right now." With a desperate heave and a lucky snag of a bare foot on the lower rail, Maya hauled the stranger over, both of them, collapsing onto the walkway in a soaking tangle. They lay there, a stunned breath clinging, while the river roared below like a crowd that had missed the ending. The 24-hour laundromat under the bridge glowed dingy and merciful. Machines hummed. The air smelled like detergent and damp denim. Maya shoved coins into a vending machine, bought 2 paper cups of something that claimed to be cocoa, and handed one across. "Here," she said. "Hold it even if you don't drink." The woman's fingers shook around the cup. Mascara bled at her temples in thin, dark veins. Up close, she looked very young and very tired. "I'm sorry," she whispered without looking up, "for crashing into your life like that." "You didn't crash," Maya said. "You turned around." Silence took a chair with them. On the wall, a TV with no sound showed a fishing documentary. After a while, the woman said, "I'm Rowan." "Maya." She blew on her cup. "I'm not going to ask you why, not tonight. You're cold and you're here, that's enough." Rowan nodded, then shook her head like someone negotiating with the wind. "I grew up inside a spreadsheet," she said, words tumbling now that they'd found a path. "After my mom died, my father turned everything into a plan. My school, my friends, who I dated, what I studied. He calls it legacy. It felt like a cage. Tonight he sent me a press itinerary to announce me as creative director for a biotech conglomerate. I never asked to join. I wanted to paint." She gave a dry laugh. "He says color doesn't pay bills." Maya stared at the swirl of cocoa skinning over. "My little brother died in winter," she said softly, the sentence landing with care. "I thought studying counseling might teach me to pull people back. Turns out there are floods you can only swim from the inside. I left school. I cook. I take pictures when I can make the light make sense." Rowan blinked hard, the shock beginning to ebb. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally. "Because someone once stood between me and the cold," Maya said. "And because you were there." Maya walked Rowan to a modest motor lodge on the East Bank, the kind with buzzing signs and a manager who knew the dignity of not asking questions. On the curb, Rowan pulled a pen from Maya's hoodie pocket, scribbled something on a crumpled receipt, folded it, and tucked it into Maya's palm. "If I'm still here tomorrow, I'll text," she said. "If I'm not, Thank you for letting me be a person. Maya didn't say, "Don't disappear." She'd learned the difference between clutching and holding. "See you on the brighter edge," she said instead. Back on the bridge, sheltering under a truss to read the note, she found neat, slanted handwriting. "Thank you for making me feel human, not a function." Our days became shift changes and bus transfers. No text arrived. Maya crossed the steel bridge most nights and caught herself scanning the rail. Absence, it turned out, had a smell like rain in an empty stairwell. Then, on an April afternoon, faint with the sweetness of lily of the valley, a black SUV fishtailed to avoid a pothole. Maya, on a delivery bike with a bag of vegan soups, braked, wobbled, went airborne, and met the street hard enough to see white. She woke to antiseptic and a ceiling tile's water stain shaped like Oregon. Her collarbone throbbed. Her wrist was a lead weight in plaster. When she turned her head, she saw a vase of blue irises and a woman in a sand-colored coat holding them. Rowan. Rowan set the flowers on the ledge and tried on a smile that wobbled at the edges. "You were on the local feed." "Delivery cyclist injured at intersection." "I saw your name and, well." She pulled the chair closer. "May I sit, please?" Maya said, and the word came out rawer than she meant. "I should have texted," Rowan added, eyes drifting over IV lines and tape, as if cataloging all the things she couldn't fix. "I left that night. Then I stayed gone." It wasn't bravery. It was fear. "You're here now," Maya said. Rowan exhaled. Then soft but steady, "I didn't tell you my last name." "It's Vale." The syllable thudded like a coin on wood. Maya knew the name. Everyone in Portland did. Vale Bioworks was etched on donation plaques, glass towers, and ethics articles. Rowan Vale sounded like a headline even when it wasn't. "I didn't want you to look at the surname instead of me," Rowan said. "You were the first person who didn't need the label." Maya's lips twitched into a crooked smile. "Noted. Also, the irises are perfect." "I read they mean hope after sorrow," Rowan said. "I didn't know what else to bring." Rowan began to appear daily, sometimes with soup in battered thermoses, sometimes with art magazines or a tin of watercolors. She read to Maya when the painkiller fog made time heavy. She watched the parking lot with the intensity of a person convincing herself the world stayed put, even when she looked away. One afternoon, Maya found a sealed envelope tucked beneath a magazine. Inside, stamped in dull red, was a hospital bill marked "Paid in Full." A note neatly folded said, "Not charity, a debt of survival." R. Maya swallowed hard. "I can't let it be a ledger," she said that evening, and fished a rubber-banded wad of small bills and coins from her tote. "Installments. Until the message matches the math." Rowan laughed and cried in the same breath. "You understand too well." From then on, Maya slipped an envelope across the table every week, $35, $20, $60, sometimes $9 in crumpled ones. Sometimes there was a photograph she'd taken before the crash, a defiant dahlia in a cracked pot, a fat alley cat on a paint can, a mural bleeding color in rain. Rowan kept each one in a shoebox and labeled the lid in marker pieces of a self-respect put back together. Discharge tasted like freedom and Advil. Rowan showed up in an old green hatchback to drive Maya not to her peeling attic sublet, but to the home of Irene, a retired midwife who'd been her mother's friend and had a permanent kettle on. "Recover here," Irene insisted, flapping a quilt in the sun. "I keep a bed for people who are coming back from edges." Recovery was physical therapy sessions and shallow walks under budding maples. It was Rowan teaching Maya to breathe through pain by counting leaves. It was Maya on a porch step with iced tea, admitting that every time she looked through a viewfinder, she saw her brother's winter. "Do you ever think about starting over?" Rowan asked one soft afternoon. "Daily," Maya said. "I want a room where anyone who walks in can exhale. A warm stove, a long table, a chair where you can talk without being corrected." "You just described a community kitchen," Rowan said. "For me, it's an open studio. Art therapy, pay what you can. No grades, no critique, just color." What if, Maya said slowly, the kitchen and the studio were the same room? They began collecting ingredients, a spreadsheet. Ironically, Craigslist posts for used ranges and sturdy tables, a storefront with light, and a landlord who'd rather have people than profit. One evening, sitting on Irene's floor amid floor plan sketches and sticky notes, Rowan looked up and simply watched. Maya watched the way she considered problems out loud, the way her hair curled when it dried, the way she did not take from herself to give to others. The look wasn't heat. It was consent to be seen. "I don't know what to name this," Maya said, gesturing between them and the drafting paper and the dog-eared shoebox of envelopes and photos. "But I want it in every season." Rowan leaned in until their foreheads met, like two people sheltering from the same wind. "Me too." The kiss was brief and steady, like setting a match to a candle that had been waiting. 3 weeks later, a photo of Rowan pushing Maya's wheelchair out of a clinic hit the gossip cycle. The captions did their usual dance, "Heiress in rebellion is she." Bankrolling a waitress. The tone toggled between fake concern and real contempt. Rowan's phone throbbed with calls from a number she could never quite stop answering. "Come home," a clipped assistant said. "Security will meet you." "You don't owe them a statement," Maya murmured, thumb rubbing circles on Rowan's palm. But the set to Rowan's jaw wasn't fury, now it was decision. "I have to go," she said. "Not to obey, to speak." Victor Vale did not do private conversations. He did pronouncements. In a room of glass and steel, he slid a file across a table. "Your mother named you after the Rowan tree," he said. "Protective, resilient. I named this company because it survives volatility. You are a pillar. Pillars do not fall." "I am a person," Rowan answered. "Not a pillar. If you persist," he said, voice soft as a blade, "you forfeit your board seat, your trust, everything." "I have one thing you don't," Rowan said. "Freedom." He locked her phone in a drawer. "Stay until you think clearly." But some fires learn to find the seam in a wall. On the third night, Rowan pulled loose a bathroom window panel. Knotted bedsheets climbed, scraped her palms, raw, coming down a rainpipe, and ran. Not toward a better life in a glossy magazine, toward a door with a porch light and a woman who would open it. When Maya did, Rowan fell into her arms like the simplest answer in the world. "Are you sure?" Maya asked, not to test, but to make space for consent again. "Yes," Rowan said. "I left the money. I left the name. I chose the person." They signed a lease on a former cobbler's shop in Buckman, brick walls, dark wood floor, a narrow window framing a scrappy maple. They hung a hand-painted sign on the glass. "Breathe community kitchen and open studio." No neon. The room itself was the advertisement: open light, warm stove, a corner with a green armchair labeled, "Sit here and talk if you want." At first the guests were neighbors, a few unhoused folks who knew Irene's quiet generosity, 3 art school kids between winter and another exam. Maya made oatmeal with apples, tomato soup, and PB&J that tasted like childhood done right. Rowan strung clothesline for drying paintings and laid out watercolors, charcoal, cheap brushes. A jar on the counter said, "Pay what you can." Thursday nights became the heart of it. People sat with steaming bowls and told the truths that walked them there. A med student sobbed without shame for the first time. A rideshare driver in his 60s spoke the name of his late wife out loud and watched it float without sinking. A queer teen traced the outlines of a whale and said, "I'm still here," like a spell. "How long do you think we'll keep doing this?" Rowan asked one night while they stacked bowls. "Forever," Maya said, then reconsidered with a grin. "Or at least until no one needs to breathe." Which is to say, forever. An anonymous account bloomed online. Their shop is a cult. Illicit funds. Emotional manipulation. A health inspector arrived unannounced, politely stern. A flower supplier forgot their orders. Letters formal and oily slid under the door, allegations and concerns and advisories about harassment of an heiress and misuse of donations. The words were lies, but lies with long legs. They tightened in against the weather. Irene came over with bread and a sermon they didn't know they needed. "You can choose," she said, ladling soup. "Live by their rules or write new ones for this warm room. Let the paperwork wait. Feed people. Make color." Nights grew longer again. Rowan's old terror tapped at the glass some evenings. She wrote letters to her father, tore them up, wrote again, tore again. On a Monday morning, she didn't write. She walked into the Vale legal offices in jeans and a black tee, with no makeup and her hair in a braid. "I'm here to sign away the trust, the board seat, any vestige of authority tied to Vale assets," she told a table of polished people. "I want my life back." Victor Vale stood. For once, he stared at his daughter as if she were not a KPI. "Do not do what you cannot understand the consequences of," he said, struggling to fold, feeling into language the way he knew to fold money into markets. "I understand," Rowan said. "I choose the consequence I can live with." A pen scratched. A door closed. No soundtrack, just the sound of shoes on tile and a father learning how much air a room can lose when love leaves it. A week later, Breathe smelled like cinnamon and second chances. A man in a gray suit sat at the back table. He ate a PB&J as if it were a difficult memory. He watched a painting on the wall, the steel bridge in rain, two tiny figures on the rail, one reaching, one returning. Rowan had painted it the first week they moved in, while the walls still smelled like fresh plaster and intention. He didn't stay long. On the counter, he slid a sealed envelope into the pay what you can jar. Rowan didn't see. She was showing a little girl how to let water carry blue into blue without pushing. That night, counting singles and coins, Maya found the envelope. Inside, a transfer certificate into the Breathe Fund Community Mental Health Support. The signature was only an initial V. A note beside it hurried and almost ashamed for her quiet waters. V. Rowan didn't cry for the money. She cried for the first hint that a locked man might have found a hinge. After that, harassing calls dwindled. The flower came on time. The same inspector ate lunch and quietly wrote compliant on a form. No one said a word. Sometimes the right strings get pulled toward the right side. On the first anniversary of the storm, Breathe launched a Thursday circle called Beginnings. Rowan sat on a wooden stool with a mug between her palms and told a roomful of mostly young women the truth without drama. "I stood on a bridge," she said. "I thought there were no choices left." Then a stranger, soaked stubborn, offered a different verb, stay. At the back, the gray-suited man returned, hiding behind sunglasses that fooled no one. He placed another envelope in the jar and left. Inside later, Rowan found the deed to a small sunlit space near a canal, perfect for Breathe 2.0. No branding, no press release, just a scrawled line for your colors. Dad. This time Rowan didn't break. She set the paper down and went to the doorway to breathe the river air. Maya, she called. When Maya looked up, Rowan held the deed with a smile that reddened her cheeks. Maybe he's learning. Learning what Maya asked, wrapping her arms around Rowan from behind. That legacy isn't buildings, Rowan said. It's whether you make a place where people breathe. They were married on a smaller, quieter span that locals called the 13th Bridge for no official reason at all, just a place that had held more beginnings than endings. Fairy lights hung like friendly constellations. The cake was lemon mousse gifted by a baker from Maya's diner days. Irene officiated, voice warm and sure. Between two banks, there is room for people. Between two lives, room for a new one. Guests brought unglamorous gifts that would last: thrift store bowls, a hand-cranked grain mill, a crayon sky drawing in a dollar store frame, a new armchair for the sit-and-talk corner. Nora from Maya's old hallway whirled in a cotton dress and stomped because her shoes squeaked. She tugged Rowan down and whispered, "Do I have two moms at Breathe now?" Rowan tapped noses with her. "You have a forest of people at Breathe. Everyone has a little mother in them." After vows, everyone wandered back to Breathe for soup and strawberries and a cheap jazz playlist that somehow made the room smell even warmer. Maya looked around and counted the changes, people who had once curled into themselves on the green chair, now laughing open at the long table sadness, with fewer sharp corners. Late, a silver-haired man stepped into the doorway, no sunglasses this time. He held a book wrapped in brown paper. He didn't stride. He waited. Rowan walked to him. They stood an arm's length apart, a lifetime between and not exactly. He began, but speech, his weapon, failed him. He offered the package. Inside was a blank journal with thick paper. On the first page, someone had written, "Breathe New Beginnings." Underneath in his hand, "You do not have to become someone else for me to be proud." He didn't say, "I'm sorry." Some griefs don't yield to apologies, but acknowledgement is its own weather. Rowan nodded before she cried. Two people met at this only intersection they could both stand, on the one named Scene. When the last guest drifted into the soft river humming. Dark Maya and Rowan set two chairs on the stoop and put their bare feet on the wood. The bridge flung glitter at the water. Maya leaned into Rowan's shoulder, and they watched the city breathe. "If you hadn't come to the bridge," Rowan murmured. "If you hadn't come back," Maya answered. "We built a little bridge here," Rowan said, threading their fingers. "It's on no map. It crosses from alone to a place," Maya said. A breeze brought the faint, plummy sweetness of someone's yard. Through the window, the green chair waited beneath its sign. On the wall, the painting of the steel bridge had acquired a faint halo around those two tiny figures. Rowan said it was reflected light. Maya suspected it was something else heat carried back from a night that could have ended them and didn't. People asked for the secret. Maya shrugged. "Keep the stove warm and the chair open." Rowan grinned. "Add color." One December, the city lost power for hours. Flashlights bobbed. Apologies collided. Maya lit candles. In the wavering glow, Breathe looked like a dream you were allowed to stay in long shadows. Breath puffing, little clouds, voices giving up their scripts. Rowan pulled out a dented ukulele and picked a 3-chord hum. People sang nonsense syllables until strangers felt like neighbors. When the power blinked back to life, a young man slid $6 into the jar 5 held together with tape and left a note. "I don't have much, but I don't want to turn kindness into a debt." Maya laughed, passed the note to Rowan. "Sound familiar?" "The circle widens," Rowan said, eyes bright. "Not closes," Maya answered, drawing a shape in the air. "Widen, widen, widen. They tied a narrow ribbon to the 13th bridge every spring, a thin strip of blue, because that's what their first year had looked like from the inside. They wrote on it with a Sharpie return, little by little. Some people passed it and smiled without knowing why. That was fine. Not everything is a public monument. Some things are a private landmark that accumulates witnesses. Maya stopped fearing the smell of disinfectant. Sometimes she volunteered at the hospital taking newborn photos for parents who couldn't afford a photographer. Rowan carried crayons and blank paper and showed any waiting child how to draw a house with open windows. They walked home in the rain, shoes squelching, hands stained with paint and flour, the two best kinds of clean. If anyone asked how they got here, Maya told a very short story. On a bad night, I said, "Don't." Someone answered. The rest is cooking, setting tables, and listening. Rowan added, and color. People would laugh and ask, "Is that really enough?" They would look at each other and nod. Because living has never asked for much more than this, a place to breathe. A hand to catch yours when your foot slips from the rail, a small human bridge built out of warm food and honest sentences. And a woman who once stood on iron in the rain, who now every time she lays blue upon blue is choosing life all over again.